So Susan, why would a woman want to build muscle? That's gross. I mean, that's terrible. Like, I mean, come on, like that's no guy's ever gonna like you.
Yeah, right, right. All that stuff that well, I mean, I grew up believing stuff like that. It's so interesting. That was lifting will make you bulky. And they always show pictures of like the Hulk and all this outrageous stuff. And, the one thing I like to tell people is this: there are a lot of benefits to building muscle, especially as you get older. But the one about I'm going to get bulky, I guess everyone has their own definition of what that is or what that looks like to them. I think most people think of it as an outrageous 400-pound guy that's got these big arms, just stereotypes. And the interesting thing is, and this, I mean, guys have a hard time bulking.
Yeah,
I mean,
look at me.
guys have a hard time building muscle. And it's like, you guys got the testosterone and it's hard for you, So women, chill. You're good. I mean, we're at a disadvantage right out of the gate, right? But if you consider a little bit of muscle bulky, well, then that's a different conversation, right? I think that's misnamed, but that may be what you're thinking. But the benefits are so great, especially as you get older, that it's one of those things I've been telling people. It's something that you have to include in your life. I really feel that strongly about it. I'm all about finding an exercise kind of variation, whatever that you like to do, that you love, whether that's, Zumba class, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Do it. But also you need to include strength training, because obviously it's going to build muscle mass. And as we get older, we lose muscle mass just by virtue of aging. And that's a real big issue, especially as you get older and you want to live a functional life past 50, and then it's going to increase your bone density. And that's significant for women, because that's such a big issue for women as they get older. And the cool thing is, if you go into strength training and your bone density is kind of, I mean, you can actually correct it with strength training, with a good strength training program. And that could be the difference between when you're 80 or 80 plus or whatever, and you fall. So many times people break a hip just automatically, just because their bones aren't strong enough. It could be the difference. Maybe you take a fall when you're 85 and you don't break anything now. You know what I mean? So super important, aside from all the bulking mythology that there is, it's just something I'm so passionate about.
So I think it's really important to, I feel like you've just been like, you're guitar soloing here. I gave you like the intro riff and you're like soloing right now. But I'm going to bring you back I'm going to bring you back to the main riff. What do you think? Because I always try, we speak in terms of like realistic expectations when it comes to training, whether people expect to like lose like 30 pounds in their first month, whether or not that's realistic, or if guys expect to like bulk up and gain like 10 pounds of raw, sheer bull testosterone muscle in their first month of training. Let me ask you this, Susan, two-part question, and this is specific to you, and then maybe we can generalize and talk about others. How long have you been like taking resistance training seriously in your own workouts? And how much muscle, if you were to put it, like how much more weight or muscle, like poundage wise, would you guess you have gained in that amount of time since you started?
So great questions. I probably have been taking this seriously for about 7 years now. And within that period of time, and this was about 2 years ago, I actually did 6 months in a specific surplus, just to play around with that. I'd never done that before.
A surplus meaning you were specifically trying to gain weight.
Yep. Yeah. And that came about, it came about primarily because I was just curious to how I would feel, all this kind of stuff, but also because I wanted to not let the scale still bother me. Like I knew the scale was going to go up, and I really wanted just to conquer the fear entirely once and for all. So I was going to purposefully make the scale go up. And so, Jordan, who still writes all my programming, we kind of talked through how to do it. And I spent 6 months in a surplus. And a surplus, when people hear this, and this is really important to point out, a lot of people hear the word surplus and they visualize feeding frenzy, right? They visualize eating as much as I want, however much I want, whenever I want, kind of thing. And this was very strategic.
Yeah, they visualize like going to McDonald's and just ordering everything on the menu.
Yeah, because I'm in a surplus. That's not what it is.
And they visualize like fat power lifters. Like, I don't want to get fat like a power lifter and all this. That's what they think when you say like bulking or surplus or something like this.
I totally agree with that. I think that's the problem. That stereotype look. That's what people think it is. But you can be very strategic about it, which I did. And I did it for 6 months. And my goal within those 6 months was to gain 1 pound a month. Slow, controlled. And I gained fat too, by the way.
So this
I
was
have
about
more body fat on me now than I did before I did this.
So your look now is actually a little softer than it was when you started.
What's that?
Your look now is actually possibly a little softer than it is when you started, is what you're saying.
A little bit. I'm not so sure now. I think I would say I am filled out more now than I was then. I've got my definition in the upper body is still pretty much there. But the difference that I see in pictures from 2.5 years ago is I was thin. I use that word for me, which I've never used that word for me ever. And what happened during these 6 months being in a small surplus, I did put on muscle. I grew glutes for the first time in my entire life. I'm 61. I've never had glutes before. I do now. And I put on some body fat with that 1 pound a month, but I also put on a lot of muscle. And to weigh that, I honestly don't know, because I would not even, I don't know how to equate whether out of the 6 pounds, how much of that is muscle. Most of it, my guess is, because I didn't put on a ton of fat. But I feel like when I got to the end here and I built this muscle, I liked my look better. I felt I looked healthier. I looked stronger. My muscles were popping more. I just liked it. So I didn't go back into a cut and try to lose some fat like a lot of people do, right? I chose to stay right in maintenance where I had been for years. And it's been like 2 years since I've done this. Over those 2 years, I've probably, out of the 6 pounds, I've dropped maybe 4 of them just naturally from being in maintenance over 2 years, not even thinking about it. It kind of ebbs and flows. So I'm kind of somewhere in the middle of weight wise of where I was before.
So you're kind of between those 2 points.
Yeah. And someone says, well, does that mean you're in a deficit? Well, of course, some days I'm in a deficit and some days I'm not in a deficit. I mean, we all are like that.
Yeah, you can't calculate it so specifically to be, it's not possible.
And I mean, we're talking, if you want to get technical, I lost 3 pounds in 2 years. It wasn't anything purposefully driven at all. I just went back to maintenance and let things just kind of happen. And the thing is, and maintenance is a really important discussion too, because that once you know how to eat and live in maintenance, you have the world at your fingertips. Like, you can eat a little less than that and be in a deficit. You can eat a little more than that and be in a surplus. And that's exactly how I did it. I never tracked during any of my surplus because I'd been in maintenance for so long, not tracking. I kind of knew how to do that. I just picked about 3 or 4 days a week that I ate a little more on those days. That's how I did it. And it worked really well for me because I knew maintenance so well. I don't recommend doing it that way. If you're really not strongly in tune with what your maintenance is, I would track everything. But for me, I didn't need to because I'd been in maintenance for so long. So it was simple. It was easy. It was simple, but it was a mind game too, right? You spend your whole life trying to get the scale to go down. And now I'm trying to get the scale to go up. And
right.